Today is October 25th. It's the 299th day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. The Constitution of Massachusetts takes effect on this day in 1780. By 1778, all the original 13 states, the former British colonies, have adopted their first constitutions. All of them except Massachusetts. 2 of the states have simply modified their colonial charters. In the other 10 states, the legislative bodies have adopted state constitutions. In 1778, the Massachusetts legislature crafts a governing document, and instead of simply adopting it themselves, they submit it to the citizens of the Commonwealth for approval. The voters of Massachusetts wholeheartedly reject the legislature's proposed constitution, which does not, in their view, adequately ensure individual rights. A special constitutional convention is elected to write a new draft constitution. The convention selects a committee of 30 to draft the document. That committee appoints John Adams, Sam Adams, and James Bowdoin to write the draft, and those 3 pick John Adams to write it. The Constitution that future second President of the United States, John Adams, creates contains a declaration of individual rights that becomes, along with the general structure of the document, the basis for the United States Constitution when it is drafted several years later. The Massachusetts Constitution is submitted to the citizens of the Commonwealth to vote on in June of 1780. The people of Massachusetts approve the new Constitution. The Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is the first constitution in the world approved by a public referendum, the first constitution created by a constitutional convention rather than a legislature, and the oldest written constitution in continuous effect in the world, taking effect on this day in 1780. The public referendum approving the Constitution establishes that representatives hold no power that is not bestowed upon them by the people, that is, the people who are, as John Adams says, the source of all authority and the original of all power. At 5 a.m., helicopters carrying United States Marines of the 8th Marine Regiment touch down at Pearls Airport on the island of Grenada and are met by small arms and machine gun fire. The Marines dig in, and another wave of helos deposit more boots on the ground, this time in the town of Grenville, due south of the old airport. Sea Cobra attack helicopters swoop in to neutralize the Soviet-made 12mm guns on a nearby hill. Operation Urgent Fury, the invasion of Grenada, has begun on this day in 1983. The invasion force is a multinational force comprised of the United States and the Regional Security System, a defense alliance created in 1982 by 4 members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. It's based out of and supported by Barbados. However, the invasion force that makes landfall on this day is primarily made up of the United States Marines, Army Rangers, and the Navy's SEAL Team 6. The Caribbean island nation of Grenada, 100 miles off the coast of Venezuela, gains its independence from the United Kingdom in 1974. The rest of the 1970s sees internal conflict in Grenada, and in 1979 there is a coup by a leftist organization that puts in place a new government, the People's Revolutionary Government, the PRG, led by the newly appointed Prime Minister Maurice Bishop. The PRG aligns itself closely with Cuba, the Soviet Union, and other communist bloc countries over the next few years, and they begin building a new airport, Point Salinas Airport, with a 9,000-foot runway that Prime Minister Bishop says is for commercial jets to increase tourism. But the leaders of neighboring Caribbean nations and President Reagan of the United States believe the 9,000-foot runway is actually intended to accommodate large Soviet transport planes carrying in weapons and military hardware. In late 1983, there is a power struggle within the PRG. The deputy prime minister leads a coup against Bishop in mid-October, placing him under arrest. Just a few days later, on October 19th, Prime Minister Bishop is executed. The Governor-General of Grenada, Paul Schoon, is placed under house arrest. Schoon reaches out to the United States for help through secret diplomatic channels. Schoon and the citizens of Grenada are not the only ones concerned about the coup. The Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, which includes Dominica and Antigua, as well as the nations of Barbados and Jamaica, call on the United States to intervene. The Marines take Grenville and Pearls Airport within hours of landing on this day. Navy SEALs are airdropped into the capital, St. George, where they secure the governor's mansion and Governor-General Schoon, as well as the government radio station. And the Rangers jump out of C-130s at the low altitude of 500 feet and take Point Salinas Airport with its 9,000-foot runway. They also secure the medical school campus located at the end of the new runway and evacuate almost 600 U.S. citizens attending medical school in Grenada. By the end of this day in 1983, the U.S.-led multinational forces have achieved all of their objectives for D-Day, and then some. Major combat operations will be complete in less than 4 days. In the days that follow, there is international outrage over the invasion of Grenada. The United Nations almost unanimously adopts a resolution condemning the United States, and by extension, President Reagan. The only opposing votes are the members of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, and Jamaica, Barbados, El Salvador, and the U.S. However, President Reagan receives a lot of support at home for his decision to invade Grenada, an invasion that sees 19 U.S. servicemen killed in action. The threat of another Soviet foothold in the Caribbean other than Cuba is unsettling, but more so, there is concern ahead of the invasion that the U.S. medical students would be taken hostage. And no one wants to see a repeat of the Iranian hostage crisis 4 years earlier. And the invasion of Grenada on this day in 1983 takes place a mere 2 days after 241 U.S. Marines, sailors, and soldiers are killed in Beirut, Lebanon, when a bomb-laden truck drives into the Marine barracks and explodes in the lobby. So it's no surprise that Americans welcome news of a military success. There are 67 days left in the year. On This Day is produced by me, Dave Schultz. Thank you very much for listening. Born on this day in 1881, Pablo Diego Jose Francisco de Paulo Juan Nepomuceno Maria de los Remedios Cipriano de la Santísima Trinidad Ruiz y Picasso, better known as Pablo Picasso, the Spanish artist who pioneers Cubism and Neo-Expressionism, an artist who is often ahead of his time. So if you're still listening, is it Caribbean or Caribbean? I went with Caribbean. Talk to you tomorrow.